the Catholic Church used to be the guiding force of Western civilization. Right now, the Catholic Church has been acting like, the chaplain to the European Union, or the United Nations. The Catholic Church is being sort of dragged along by Western civilization in its decline. Meanwhile, mouthing slogans of progress and synodality and so forth. He said, today's modernists and progressives are like the Japanese on islands who were still fighting in the 1960s, thinking that they hadn't lost World War II. No, they're just in denial, right? They're living in a different world. But they do have the levers of power. They have money and power, right? And that's why it can be depressing to us, because we feel like, oh, they've got the money, they've got the power, but they don't have the truth and they don't have children.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted. I'm Catherine Bennett.
And I'm Mark Lambert.
And you'll see a familiar face, our friend. We're very pleased to welcome you back with us today, Dr. Peter Kwasniewski.
Thank you so much, Catherine and Mark.
A post-Matt Fradd Peter Kwasniewski, no less, Mark.
You're a bit more famous now than the last time we saw you.
Oh, my goodness. That was a lot of fun, I have to say. I really enjoyed myself there.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, if people watching haven't yet seen, first of all, the conversation we had on our channel, and then subsequent to that, you then went to speak with Matt Fradd and had a longer conversation, coming in just a little under 4 hours. I've shared it with everybody, and they have all come back with the same response, which is, this is gold dust. Thank you so much for sharing it. So we've linked that below, so do take a look at those two conversations, and then gear yourself up for this one, because we've invited you on today, Dr. Peter, to talk about this new project in education. So we'll come to exactly what that is in a moment, but let's begin with some general questions. You've written extensively about the crisis in Catholic education. I know it very well. If you had to distill this crisis, to one or two root causes, what would they be?
Well, we have to start with, I'm an Aristotelian philosopher, and Aristotle is always asking the question about the purpose or the end of something. What is the goal, the telos? And the purpose of education is to cultivate and expand human powers or capacities. That's what it's about. So obviously, it presupposes a knowledge of human nature as God made it and as he elevates it through grace. So if you don't understand the nature of man according to right reason and according to divine revelation, your educational philosophy will be a mess. It'll be a travesty, a parody, even a diabolical inversion, right? And so, obviously this is a big question, but speaking in broad terms, modernity is characterized by many false accounts or definitions of man, of human nature, and they primarily have in common a kind of subjectivism or a placing of man at the center of all things, a voluntarism by which our will somehow makes what is right, instead of our will choosing what is known to be right by nature and by God. So basically, man, if you don't get the nature of man, you can never have a good education. So traditionally speaking, in Christianity, man is understood as being made to the image and likeness of God. Why? Because he has intellect. He has the ability to know the truth. He has will, which is the power to choose the good. And he has his bodily abilities as well. That's why he can make beautiful, fine arts, sculptures, paintings, cathedrals. Also, we have the liberal arts, which perfect the intellect, logic, grammar, rhetoric, not just the intellect, but also our power of speech, our power of writing. All these different powers can be perfected, right? And that's what arts do. That's what sciences do. And science, the queen of the sciences, is metaphysics. In other words, philosophy is the science of sciences, and all the other sciences are subordinate to it. That's the Catholic vision. And I would just note that it's this vision of a hierarchy of disciplines and sciences and arts that we inherit from the ancient and medieval world. And that is the vision that inspired the original universities, right? The University of Paris, of Bologna, of of Oxford. These were medieval Catholic institutions dedicated to perfecting the nature of man according to reason and revelation through arts and sciences. That's the whole Catholic vision of education. It's so beautiful. It's so comprehensive. It's so coherent. But that has been taken apart plank by plank over the last, let's say, 5 centuries, through rationalism, through humanism, through secularism in different ways. And now what we're looking at when we look at the educational world, it's mostly just a bunch of scraps and shards of that once unified vision. At best, scraps and shards. At worst, knives and daggers, So maybe that's just a way of putting it into a capsule.
I think that's excellent. I have a background in education myself and recognise so much of what you say. I was speaking with a homeschooling mum just yesterday, in fact, and she was saying that when her children were younger, she had a friend who said, I'm really worried about them reading Peter Rabbit because, he gets into all sorts of mischief and does terrible things. And what a bad example. And she said, but you have to look at it. What's the nature of a rabbit? It's not the nature of a person. And I think we anthropomorphize, don't we? We do this a lot with cartoons and things. We say, but rabbit behavior, you talk about our rational soul and our sensate soul, is different to human behavior. And unless we can begin with that question, what is it? What does it mean to be a human? Why have we been created? Where are we from and where are we going? Then I think it's impossible to have a coherent vision for education. So thank
Exactly.
you. Yeah.
And I mean, along those lines, I would also add a point that Benedict XVI was very fond of repeating, that because of the fall and the darkening of the human intellect and disordered concupiscence and the many ways in which we can be pulled aside from the right path, God has revealed many things to us that we could in principle know with our reason, for something as simple as his existence, right? There are proofs of the existence of God. And if you grasp the proofs, you can see that they're valid and that God must exist. But most people don't have the leisure or the intellectual stamina, as it were, to go through these proofs of the existence of God and really grasp them. And so God made his existence known in other ways. He made it known through interventions in history, through miracles, especially through the incarnation of Christ. He came to us to tell us, I exist, I'm real, I love you. This is what you need to do in order to live a good and holy life and be happy, right? So God in his mercy reveals to us what our human nature is, even if we can also see that philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, they already grasped a lot of the truth, even apart from that divine revelation. So this harmony of faith and reason is such a distinctive feature of the Catholic intellectual tradition. We are not afraid of reason. We're not afraid of arguments. We're not afraid of challenges. Thomas Aquinas, his Summa consists of thousands of objections to Catholic doctrine, every one of which he answers brilliantly, right? There's nothing like that. Show me where a modern philosopher has the integrity and the honesty to raise that many objections against his own position, right? It doesn't happen. I do want to say, if it's all right, can I talk a little bit about what went wrong with Catholic education?
Yes, is somebody at the doorbell? Is that
Oh,
you?
sorry.
Have you got guests, Peter?
That's my silly little phone. Let me turn it off here. Speaking of modern life. Okay, great. That's not going to ring anymore.
Peter Kwasniewski's phone goes off. Oh, that's got to be a headline somewhere.
Yes, but it's just a light phone, so I don't want anybody to think that I've gone over to the dark side. I don't have a smartphone.
Good.
So,
yes,
anyway,
please do. Yeah, please do.
So I said the church was responsible for the emergence of universities. And as a result, after hundreds of years, the world was crisscrossed with Catholic universities, Catholic high schools, Catholic grammar schools everywhere. We know this. The United States boasted the largest Catholic school system in the entire world. We had thousands of Catholic schools run by priests and nuns. This is only 50 years ago we're talking about, right? What happened? Well, unfortunately, this is a whole separate conversation, but I think what happened with Vatican II, whatever your take is on Vatican II, it unleashed a storm of secularization in the church. Whether that can be faulted to the council, or whether it's an unfortunate result of misapplication, misinterpretation, whatever. I don't want to get into that here. But the fact remains that there was a storm, a tempest of secularization. And, the religious sisters left in their thousands. The schools began to close down. They began to substitute secular curricula for Catholic curricula. And the worst of all were the universities, because I think that's where the pride, the arrogance is most to be found, among the very highly educated, the cognoscenti, the intelligentsia, right? They're always the worst. They're always the ones who actually drive the revolution. You have to have people like that. And so what happened in 1967 was this infamous Land O'Lakes statement, which is where a bunch of Catholic university and college presidents got together, and they literally said, in the name of academic freedom, we are no longer bound to the teaching of the Catholic Church, right? What our purpose is just academic inquiry. It's not to teach the faith and to uphold the faith and so on. And I would just point out, in recent days, University of Notre Dame, it took them a really long time, but they just recently said, we are no longer requiring our employees to uphold the Catholic values. That's as vague as it gets, right? But if you want to work at Notre Dame, you don't even have to uphold Catholic values anymore. That's the result. That's the final sort of dismal, aftermath of the Land O'Lakes statement. So what happened was what I would call a counter-revolution, kind of like the Cristeros rising up against the anti-clerical Freemasons in the 1920s, right? The counter-revolution took the form of little colleges, like little Davids against the Goliath, namely Thomas Aquinas College. That led the charge. That's my alma mater, the California one. The Massachusetts branch didn't exist yet for a long time. But that was founded in 1971. The year I was born was the year that TAC was born as well. And then Christendom College was founded in 1977 in Virginia. And Thomas More College of Liberal Arts in New Hampshire was founded in 1978. And then the college that I was most closely connected with establishing was Wyoming Catholic College. That is a later generation. That wasn't founded until 2005, although it's hard to believe how time flies, because that's already 20 years ago. And I was there pretty much from the beginning of that place. I came in 2006 to help get it off the ground. So what all of these colleges have in common, they have several things in common. First, they are fully and integrally and unapologetically and joyfully Orthodox, right? They just simply teach, they simply hold what the church teaches, and they see it as their mission to educate Catholics as Catholics, right? In the truth of the faith and in the truths of natural reason. Secondly, they're all micro colleges, right? At least to use the fashionable jargon. That is, these are all places that are under 500 students. And intend to be that small. In fact, I think small is always best. And I actually think that over 200 students is too many. And I say that on the basis of concrete experience. When you get more than 200 students on a campus, it's very hard for everybody to know everybody else. And there's something really beautiful about having like a village, in a sense, an academic village, where people celebrate each other's birthdays, where they know one another's stories, where they talk about their classes together. And that does happen with 400 or 500 students, but at that point, it's large enough that there are now sort of microclimates. Like there are different groups of students. They kind of necessarily break off more into cliques, because that's too large of a number to form really one community. That's a digression. But anyway, these are all small schools. And I think we need, as part of this counter-revolution, this ongoing counter-revolution, we need a lot of different kinds of small schools. TAC, WCC, Christendom, Thomas More, they can't do it all. Each one of them has its own location, its own specificity. Some people will be attracted to what makes it specific, some people won't be. I would love to see a little Catholic college in every state of the United States and in every country of the world, each of them distinctive, like different wines from different regions. Like we need distinctive approaches, because there isn't really a one size fits all. And so I think, some are going to be more focused on the intellectual life, right? TAC is very heavily philosophical, theological. They've got a lot of mathematics and sciences. It's a very brainy kind of school, right? This is the way it is. But we need schools that are also focused on practical skills, right? Like there are three. It's very exciting. All this stuff is happening now. The College of St. Joseph the Worker in Steubenville. I don't know if you've heard about this. If you haven't, you should check it out. San Damiano College for the Trades in Illinois, and then the Harmel Academy of the Trades in, I believe, Minnesota. These are places where young men can go, and they do get some liberal arts and philosophy and theology studies. It's there, that is part of the program, but they also get hands-on training in a practical vocation like carpentry, building, plumbing, electricity, HVAC, whatever it might be. So they're learning a practical skill that is instantly marketable, because we actually don't have enough of these people in the world. We have too many people who have been trained to do nothing other than a desk job. And then when the plumbing breaks or the electricity breaks, you're scrambling around trying to find somebody to fix this. And yet those jobs are they're real jobs, they're good jobs, and they pay well. So this is what, I think it's great to see there's this new group of Catholic schools that combine liberal arts with trades, with training in the trades.
Definitely broadens the appeal, doesn't it? And it's funny because often these conversations tend to roll from one to another, and it's really providential the way that it happens. But Catherine and I our last conversation together, we were talking about the way that attitudes have changed in terms of the way that we accept Catholic teaching. And perhaps you could even broaden that and say that it's more a general observation about the way our society views the law, where you could say in the Old Testament, like particularly the Hebrews saw the law as something really special that set them apart and was a great gift that allowed them to succeed and flourish. And today we see the law as oppressive and nasty and something that takes away our freedom. And that's the revolution that you're talking about in lots of ways, in terms of you see in Catholic schools that it's like my experience as a governor and as a parent is that teachers want to break away from that, from the rigidity of a sort of an ossified legal system, if you like, and be much more free about the way that they approach the intellect. But as you beautifully articulated there, the truth is that these are the revealed truths from God that help us to understand how to live a fuller life, aren't they, Peter? And that's surely the key thing that we need to communicate as educators, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you put it very well. Law, if it's good law, and certainly the divine law is good law, there are many human laws that are quite reasonable if you look at them, to prevent people from smashing up other people's property or whatever. These things are liberating for us, because they liberate us from the slavery of our passions. They one of the functions of law, according to Aristotle, is educational. Law is supposed to educate citizens in how to be virtuous citizens. And we need that help. It's like a guardrail that we can follow. I mean, when you think about how little children grow up, they need so much from the adults around them. They need to learn how to speak. They need to learn how to dress. They need to learn how to be polite. There's so many things they need to learn. And all of those things, if they're well taught, if they're taught with the right intentions and the right content, are actually liberating the human nature of that child and enabling the child to be more and more fully human, right? And that's exactly what the Catholic faith does. It makes us more fully human, as well as making us divine by divinization. And so, it's really a shame. It's a shame that people have such a mixed up understanding of law and faith and reason, all of these things. But I think it's because they caricature them into a straitjacket, and they also have a really inflated notion of themselves. And so if you think that what you're supposed to be doing is forming your own opinions about everything and then doing whatever you want, which is kind of the modern Western standard, well, then of course these things are going to look oppressive, right?
A bit non-serviam as well, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Of course. But I mean, it doesn't really, I don't think it takes a lot of self-knowledge to recognize that our intellects are actually rather puny. We need the help of the great books, the great minds, the great tradition, the magisterium of the church. These things have for us an expansive and elevating power, right? When I went to TAC, and I had a great experience there. we spent 4 years reading nothing but great books. Well, okay, there were a few things that were not great books, but most of it was, Dante, Homer, Shakespeare, Aristotle, Plato, Aquinas, Augustine. I mean, just, on and on and on. It was fantastic. And when you are constantly engaged with these great minds, it
elevates your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just blows open all these shut windows and doors, and it makes you experience the world in a much greater way than you could ever do. And I think, by the way, traveling has a similar effect. I mean, it doesn't have to. I think study almost always has that kind of effect. But if you travel with an open mind and with humility and with the willingness to learn from foreign places and foreign cultures, I think it also has that expansive effect on the soul. It kind of gets you out of your shell and out of yourself, and enables you to be a broader person. But yeah.
You can really see the corruption in education if you speak to people who truly believe that any rights they have come from the UN or from Parliament, because it's uncoupled from the natural law, uncoupled from the divine law, and how crucial it is to get back that right understanding of law. And human law should only ever instantiate divine law, natural law. And so now we see people say, well, of course abortion's fine up to this point because the law says it is. Or of course it's fine for gay people to get married because, what do you mean it's wrong? The law says it is. Yes. And it's like the law has been given by a group of, they don't seem to question why those particular group of humans at that particular time have the right to tell us that this is an objective law. So it's terrible degradation and corruption in thinking.
No, exactly. I mean, what you just explained shows that for such people, the law is completely arbitrary. It's just another form of might makes right. If this particular group happens to be in Parliament, they can exercise their collective might against the lives of the unborn, right? That's just might makes right. That's, but it's put under this veneer or this facade of human rights language and this kind of thing. Well, I mean, as Tom Holland has pointed out, and many other people, we would not have the concept of human rights were it not for Christianity, right? If you look outside of Christianity, no human rights. Sorry. So really, the West is just the West is coasting along on the fumes of the gas tank of Christendom, has been for a long time, and the fumes are running out, and that's what we can see. Right?
Is it me now, or is it you?
It's you. Long pause. It's you.
So, all right. So, Peter, why St. Athanasius and why now?
Yes, exactly. Well, so I seem to I have a way of getting involved in new schools. If I look back on my life, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but I'm always connected with startups, and that's good. It's exciting, and I'm very, very pleased and proud to be able to help out the College of St. Athanasius just by telling people about their existence. So it is a school in the process of development, in the process of formation. It hasn't been founded yet. They're looking to found in the next few years. I'll get into later on some practical steps that would have to take place in order for that to be achieved. But I think it's a wonderful vision. They picked as their patron the greatest champion of orthodoxy in an age of crisis, right? We all know this. We all love St. Athanasius. I kind of have this feeling that 50 years ago, Catholics didn't really talk much about St. Athanasius, but now everybody's talking about St. Athanasius. So he's a great patron to have. He is somebody who, at a time of crisis, he didn't give up. He didn't fall prey to a kind of depression or false resignation. He actually went into overdrive, and he fought harder and harder. And I think that, that makes him really somebody we should all look up to. We can all look up to. The motto of the College of St. Athanasius is know thyself, know thy God, choose thy path. And the reason they have this here is their mission, the mission that they envision is to help students live what they call the great vocations. And I love this expression, taking vocations in a broad sense, right? Not like just marriage, religious life, priesthood, but in terms of the vocation that God is calling you to in your life, such as Are you going to do agriculture? Are you going to be a farmer, let's say like an organic farmer? Or are you going to be a cook? Or are you going to be an architect? Or are you going to be an educator in a school? Or a musician, or whatever it might be. These are all vocations, and they've designed their curriculum based on a comprehensive vision of human nature. This I particularly love as a Thomist, right? They basically say there are three domains. There's the domain of letters, the domain of arts, and the domain of science. And under letters, you have intellect, will, and conscience. That is, intellect corresponds to philosophy of education, or forming educators. Will corresponds to justice and jurisprudence, so forming lawyers, Catholic lawyers. And then conscience corresponding to Catholic culture and literary arts, so forming writers and let's say, writers of screenplays and novels and poetry and so forth. Then in the realm of arts, you have in the area of sight, visual art and design, in the area of sound, music, and dramatic arts, and in the area of taste and smell, culinary arts and horticultural studies. And then finally, in the domain of science, there's the aspect of shelter and sanctuary, to which corresponds architecture, then nourishment, to which corresponds agriculture, and then healing, to which corresponds biology and medicine. Pre-medicine is what they're thinking of, nursing primarily, or those who want to then continue with medical school could become doctors. So this is 9 areas, and they ultimately hope to offer 9 degrees, 9 bachelor's degrees, which would basically be education, law, literature, visual art and design, music, cooking, architecture, agriculture, and pre-medicine. So these would be the 9 disciplinary areas. And I can't go into too much detail, but they have this wonderful, let me see if I can get it to appear on screen, a sort of academic and informational bulletin that they've published that people can request, and they can certainly read that kind of content, I think, also on the website. But it goes into considerable detail about these 9 degree areas, and all of the curriculum that's been planned for each one, I think, is brilliant. Because it has a kind of backbone of liberal arts, which is always necessary. I mean, I would never ever sponsor or promote a school that didn't have a liberal arts core curriculum, right? That's absolutely necessary. But then around that, they build up degree-specific courses for these 9 areas. And I love that combination of the strength of the liberal arts and the great books, along with the strength of vocational training. Right. It seems like, unfortunately, a lot of Catholics nowadays feel like they have to choose between one or the other. Either I get a liberal arts degree, and at the end, I'm saying, what am I going to do with this? It was wonderful. I had a great time reading hundreds of great books, but what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
and then on the other hand, more often, the choice of just going into a school where right away you have to choose a major and you have to start taking all of these courses. You don't even know if this is what you want to do. So I think what the College of St. Athanasius is really aiming for is I would say they're aiming for a perfect blend of the general and the particular, of the liberal and the more vocational, right? So that's just a little bit of a sketch. I would say.
How did you get involved with it then, Peter? How did you first find out about it? And
well, Tim Bratt, who is the name of he's the head of the board of this project, the foundation that's pursuing this enterprise. He just reached out to me about a year ago and said, you've been involved in education. I've read and watched what you've written and said about education, and I really want you to know about this college because I think you'd be interested in it. And he was right. He knows my weaknesses. So I read this bulletin. I loved it. In fact, I read it. I was on a trip to give a lecture somewhere, and I read the whole thing on the airplane flight. And I was just like, whoa, so somebody probably thought I was reading some kind of scintillating work of literature. It was actually a catalog for a possible school. But anyway, so I really fell in love with their vision. I think it's exactly it's exactly an approach that we need right now at this time, just so that people can go through the program and receive what they need to have a good, robust Catholic career at the end of it. One thing I love about the 9 disciplinary areas they've chosen is that every one of them is an area in which Catholics can still flourish, and in which there's a need for people trained in this area, right? I mean, in a way, you could pick, there are hundreds of disciplines, but they picked 9 that are pivotally and integrally connected with human nature, and therefore are always needed. You always need people to do these particular things. You always need to build shelters. You always need to grow food. You always need to prepare food. That culinary art program has to do also with hospitality and, hotel. And I mean, there are various aspects of it. It's not just about cooking like home ec, but it's also about these other aspects. So all of these are areas that are going to be perennially valid, and so in that sense, you can't go wrong with these particular career paths. The other thing I should mention, lest I forget, is that they're not crazy enough to say we're going to start with 9 disciplinary tracks. That would be impossible. You can't start a new school with 9 different degree programs. They would start with 3, and the 3 that they would do are architecture, horticultural studies and culinary arts, and philosophy of education. And the reason that they would start there is that everybody needs teachers. I mean, for the very reasons we've been talking about, education is in a state of crisis. So what would St. Athanasius recommend? He would say, form good teachers for private schools, for public schools, if you have the backbone and the stamina, but I mean, like charter schools, for instance, or for homeschool, right? We need good teachers in all of these areas. And so that's one degree program that's kind of obvious, I would say. The horticultural studies and culinary arts, this I think is fascinating, because not only is that a viable career path, but also it will enable the students to help run the meal service at the college, so that it becomes a kind of positive feedback loop, right? And then they can also, let's say, they could do banquets or catering or something for the local community. I mean, there are various outreach possibilities there. And then finally, architecture, because there's a fairly moderate infrastructure involved in architecture. That is, you can bring in the teachers, you can bring in the tools you need, and you can train architects without having, say, extensive medical labs or something like that, right? So it's a way of starting with a program that is realistic for a new school, right? So yeah, very exciting. I think it's quite a compelling vision.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like it.
I love what you've been saying, and I'm thinking part let's present this to our viewers, and part selfish mum here thinking, oh yes, I've got an elder son who needs to, because we're having lots of conversations at the moment about his next steps, because there's this sense of there's this one pathway and you don't question it, this is what you do. And what is that pathway? That pathway is go through school and be totally corrupted by it and indoctrinated by the lies that the culture presents, then go to university and pay greatly for the privilege of more rubbish indoctrination and breaking apart of any kind of true humanity that you once had, saddle you with loads of debt, have you leave school in your mid-20s, an infant, with loads of debt, unable to get on the property ladder, unable to do anything apart from repeat the nonsense that's been drilled into you. This is no pathway for any young person who wants to go on and have a family, to be a father, to raise children, and funnily enough, the other day we've been decorating, me and my eldest daughter have been decorating our son's bedroom, and we got this Hungarian chap to do some of the furniture, because I'm well past that, Peter. Time was I was putting together shelves and things, but those days are gone. And in the time he was with us, he'd got all the furniture together. I had a problem with one of the switches, and he said, oh, I'll fix that. He went to fix the switch and sorted out the electrics. The same day, some problems with the plumbing, off he is doing the plumbing. And then lo and behold, I leave the house to drive away in my car, and the battery's flat, and I'm rolling my eyes, and he says, don't worry, I can do that. And he's come round in one day, this Hungarian chap, and by the way, we had some great conversations as well. And I thought, we outsource so much of this, and I know I outsourced it and he came in, but the point is, wouldn't it be great to be a young man starting off in life, not saddled with debt, having all the intellectual, being able to form opinions, being able to give reasons, speak well, write well, and also look after your family, not have to pay someone loads more money and get into loads more debt to fix your taps, to sort out your woodwork and electrics and everything else. It's brilliant. Yes. It's just what we need. Just what we need.
Yes. No, I agree. And what I've seen developing in recent years, and I do think the United States is on the cutting edge. We seem to be the best and the worst. I mean, really, like, we have the best and the worst in our country. I do think that's true. But on the side of the good that you see here, I think there's really a movement towards Catholic families relocating to be near one another and to begin helping each other in the ways that villages always helped each other, and I mean, I know that sounds Amish, it sounds Luddite, whatever, but it's just human. It's a human scale, and it means that people can really, I mean, we shouldn't live in a society where everybody is a stranger to everybody else, where everybody's driving an hour to do anything, to go to church, you have to drive an hour, and there's nobody to help you, and you have to pay through the nose to get help in from the outside and whatever. This is a totally non-sustainable way of life. It's very, very unnatural, right? And so to have communities beginning to develop where people can share one another's strengths and take care of one another's weaknesses, right? This just sounds like living as the body of Christ, right? This is what we should do. So I do like the fact that in their bulletin of information from the College of St. Athanasius, they actually have this wonderful description at a certain point of how, when the place is fully running with all pistons going, with all these degree programs, that the various degree programs will actually be able to assist in the running of the college in various ways. They're trying to make the place as self-sustaining as possible. And so the agriculture program, because this is going to be located, God willing, in Illinois, in the Midwest, which is a perfect place to grow crops, right? Why not grow organic crops in a greenhouse outside, use those crops to teach what you need to teach, but also to feed the students in the cafeteria, and then they get fresh food and they're healthier and all the rest of it. So it just seems to be, it's like Wendell Berry. I don't know if you're familiar with Wendell Berry. I mean, of course, he's not 100% accurate.
I've got his little book up here.
Yeah, but I mean, Wendell Berry, he describes that agrarian life done properly, it just works. It works for everybody who's involved in it, and that's in a little way what I think a lot of people long for, and they want to get back to somehow those roots in the earth, those roots in local community. So
I noticed, Peter, that the mission statement makes a very striking, explicit claim about the role of men and women. The prospectus articulates these differentiated roles for either sex, which obviously is rooted firmly in Catholic anthropology. How do you expect prospective students and society at large to react to this sort of deeply countercultural vision?
Yes. Well, I think, again, I think that the vision statement here strikes a good balance, because it doesn't say, as a chauvinist might say, that only men should get educated and women shouldn't be educated. No, it says everybody is a human being created in the image and likeness of God who needs to be intellectually cultivated. You need to have something going on up here, especially if you expect your mother to help educate the children, So this is, in fact, we need to have educated women in order for them to do all the feminine things that they want to do and that we need them to do, right? But on the other hand, it points out that men and women, because they're different, they're going to be called to different kinds of vocations. Now we know, there's a flexibility in this area, right? We know Saint Gianna Beretta Molla. She was a good wife and mother. She took care of her family, but she was also a doctor, and she was an excellent doctor. So it's not to say this is an absolute either or situation. It might be that somebody who goes through the nursing degree program at the college ends up working as a nurse for a number of years before she gets married. After she gets married, maybe she works part-time as a nurse to help supplement the income, But I think there are different ways in which this can work out practically. But I think that you would find that there are many young women, young Catholic women. I think predominantly homeschooled, I'll say, but not exclusively, who would look at a college program like the one here in horticultural studies and culinary arts and say, yeah, I want that. I want to learn those things because, 100 years ago, every young lady went through home economics. They learned how to cook and bake and sew and do all kinds of practical household tasks. And almost nobody knows how to do that anymore outside of these Catholic homeschooling kind of, circles, right? But I mean, what look at what we've lost, right? You don't know how to make your own clothes. You have to buy cheap stuff from China or Taiwan or Thailand or whatever. I mean, we've lost so much by outsourcing everything. And I think that there's a group of people who would be attracted to a college that says, hey, why don't we actually learn these things again for ourselves, right? And not just always perpetually outsource them.
Yeah, that's so true. And it also speaks to the breakdown between generations. We no longer, we sort of write the old people off, stick them in homes, have little to do with them. Often families divide and move to other parts of the world. I think about my own father, who was a builder and a carpenter, and he, with my own children, has been busy in the summer months making birdhouses with them. And while he's making the birdhouses, he's chatting to them, and they're talking. And my son is learning from my father, and my daughters are sewing and knitting and cooking with me. And those things may seem insignificant. Have they done their homework? But I think these things are hugely significant, and it's also just that relationship that's passed on. If we're fortunate enough to have, my children only have grandfathers, but they're precious. Yes, they're elderly. Yes, they smell. Yeah, they're difficult and awkward, but we don't shove them in a home. We say what a rich resource they are, and their love, and how do we show that love?
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. And now that I am a proud grandfather, my son had my first granddaughter about 4 months ago. Thank you. I am so looking forward to being a grandfather and to being present to my grandchildren and to, just spending time with them, talking to them, helping educate them, listening to what they're interested in, sharing music with them. I mean, there's so much that I'm looking forward to doing. And that's the way it's supposed to work, right? I mean, it takes, when you live for 5-6 decades, you actually learn a thing or two, so it seems like it's only appropriate that you should, pass that on. Plus, of course, the love of a grandparent is different. It's, the love of a parent is more protective and more jealous in a certain sense, but the grandparent's love is this sort of pure effusion of joyful love and welcome, So I don't know, there's something about it that I think is really special that I've noticed. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm just going to say something here for a moment as a proud father. My son and my daughter-in-law are the most amazing people. My son bought a school bus a year ago, and he completely gutted it and turned it into a mobile home, into this beautiful mobile home. And he and his wife and their daughter are living in that right now. It's beautiful. I mean, it's like got gorgeous wallpaper, wooden furniture, all over the place. It's incredible. So he's actually become a handyman. I don't know where he got that from, because I'm like I know how to use a screwdriver and a hammer is about as far as I get with that. It kind of skipped a generation because my dad was very hands-on and my son is very hands-on. And then his wife, she can knit and sew anything. She sewed her own wedding gown. It was gorgeous. She's made socks for everybody. She makes sweaters. She makes shirts. I mean, anything you can imagine, she's making it. I can't even believe that they're so different from the way I was at their age. I'm so thankful to the Lord, and I would love to see more young people like that. So
it's beautiful, yeah. Peter, I was just wondering, what should a 17-year-old Catholic ask himself when discerning whether to choose a St. Athanasius style college over a mainstream university, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. If this 17-year-old is serious about his faith, then he needs to ask himself, what is the environment that is going to nourish my life as a Catholic and as a human being most? Where am I going to really be encouraged to strive for perfection. Be perfect as your Heavenly Father is perfect. That means moral perfection. That means a campus culture that promotes purity and chastity and modesty, right? That means intellectual perfection, a campus curriculum that promotes, the liberal arts and the training in these great vocations, right? So it seems to me, I say it's a no-brainer, because why wouldn't you want to be challenged in all the right ways and not challenged in all the wrong ways, right? This is what I would say. I'm not saying that you can't go to a big university and get a good education. I know, this happens, for example, at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, where there's a gorgeous Newman Center that was built by Bishop James Conley, one of the best bishops in the United States. It's a beautiful, beautiful traditional church, huge building. They have courses in the humanities inspired by John Senior going on to supplement what the students are getting across the street at University of Nebraska. They have wonderful fellowship. They have, their masses are reverent. They have confessions all the time. I mean, so therefore, a Catholic student going to this secular university, if they really plug into the Newman Center and take advantage of it, they can do well, right? But it's still an imperfect solution. It's still, kind of like that statue in the book of Daniel, where you're trying to put together iron and clay and, various elements that don't really mix together, right? And I think the benefit of Thomas Aquinas, Wyoming Catholic, Christendom, or College of St. Athanasius, is that it gives you a fully integrated Catholic program, a way of life that is, that is going to set you up for natural success and supernatural happiness. That's what I would say.
So it just sounds like a dream come true, really, from Catherine and I's perspective, because it's just like a unicorn over here. It just doesn't exist. And we're constantly looking across the pond and sort of with envious eyes at what can be achieved. But it's the most important thing for me is the passion for education that you've got. And that, the educators that we've met in the States, when we were in Chicago, we met some amazing people who have got that amazing passion for educating young minds and sharing the wonders of our world with them in a way that will help them to grow in not just in terms of, that journey of ticking this box so that you can move on to the next thing, become a wage slave, but actually to grow as a human being. It's so important. Yes. Before we're getting on now to an hour, and the trouble is we'll end up doing a Matt Fradd. We'll end up doing 3 hours.
We're going to go over 4 to beat Matt Fradd. Come on.
I wanted to give it's not that one. I wanted to give the last few minutes to, you've just written this absolutely outstanding post on your Substack about, why they're taking away the Latin Mass, where you acknowledge the fact, the rumor that I started about the nuncio last week. And then, you'll go I think one of the things is we've known each other for a number of years, and that we're so on the same wavelength, and everything you write in this piece really resonates with me. And fundamentally, you're saying, look, the people who run the church at the moment don't actually really believe in the faith,
Yeah.
So, where do we go? It's one thing to acknowledge that, but we always find the tension on Catholic Unscripted we want to encourage people to be Catholic at the same time, don't we? It's not the end, is it? It's not like, it doesn't mean we've failed. It doesn't mean the church has failed just because we're in a bad time in history. Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Sure. And I would encourage people to go and read that article in full. It's on Pelican Plus. It's also on Substack. At the moment, those two are kind of mirroring each other, my Substack and Pelican Plus. But Pelican Plus is the place I'm going to be eventually, so that's where they should go and read it.
We'll link it, Peter.
Exactly. Perfect. But I think that we're kind of in a state of civil war right now, to be honest. That's true about Western civilization in general. It's true. You can see it in England, in Germany, and France because of immigration, because of all the stuff. I mean, you know it. I don't even need to tell you. You're right in the middle of it. But I read the European Conservative, and I'm very conversant with what's going on in Europe. It is virtually a civil war. It could explode into a real guerrilla dirty war, as David Betts says, at any time. All it takes, it's like a powder keg that's waiting for a spark, it seems to me. And you see that in, for example, in Ireland, with all those, with people going and smashing and burning things because of what, the immigrants raping a little girl. I mean, it's a powder keg, right? And the Catholic Church used to be the guiding force of Western civilization. Right now, the Catholic Church has been acting like, the chaplain to the European Union, or the United Nations. The Catholic Church is being sort of dragged along by Western civilization in its decline. Meanwhile, mouthing slogans of progress and synodality and so forth. But the fact is that what's happening in a general way in the West is also happening in a specific way in the Catholic Church. There is a kind of civil war. You could call it a dirty war, in which you have the heterodox and the orthodox, the modernists and the traditionalists, the believers and the unbelievers, Christ and Belial. Ultimately, it really is very stark and very dramatic. The homosexuals and the heterosexuals, right? This is, however you want to characterize this, there is a true battle going on. And that's why I always say to Catholics, look, it's not going to be easy. There's no easy solution to this right now. You're living in a kind of it's a war, even if there aren't guns yet, right? It's a war. It's an ideological war, at least. And it's very concrete because it could affect your local mass. It could affect your professional and educational opportunities. It's very serious. And so I don't think there's a kind of easy one-size-fits-all solution. I can't give one piece of advice to everybody. What I can say is get as close as you possibly can to a vibrant traditional community. That's going to be easier and harder for different people, but stay close to the traditional liturgy, whether it's an Eastern or Western liturgy. Try to, get to be friends with other traditional Catholic families who are on the same page as you. Do homeschooling. You have to have a really spectacular school not to do homeschooling, if you ask me. There are things that we can all do, and we have to do them because what we're trying to do is survive and outlast this period and build a generation that can rebuild the church in the future. That's what we're trying to do. It's kind of a battle of attrition at this point. Who's going to be left standing when all the dust settles? And the reason I'm confident and optimistic in some ways is that the progressivist side they're fighting a losing battle. They can't win.
Aren't they?
They're sterile. They're not popular. Actually, a lot of people hate what they're doing. Their masks have fallen off. It's really easy if you even pay attention for 3 seconds, it's really easy to see what their game is. And, they are desperate. Part of the reason they're acting the way they are is that they're desperate. And they know that, as Kevin Tierney says, I love Kevin Tierney's commentary, he says the vibe shift has come for these people, right? Their day is over. The day of the 60s and the 70s is over, right? But they don't realize it yet. Somebody used this, I think he used this analogy. He said, today's modernists and progressives are like the Japanese on islands who were still fighting in the 1960s, thinking that they hadn't lost World War II. No, they're just in denial, right? They're living in a different world, but they do have the levers of power. They have money and power, right? And that's why it can be depressing to us, because we feel like, oh, they've got the money, they've got the power, but they don't have the truth and they don't have children. And I'm sorry, but I'd rather have truth and children and tradition on my side, right? That's the winning recipe. So
you see it really with the young people as well, that, there's this constant, I can't believe it coming out of the Vatican at the moment, this constant thing about Vatican II, reaffirming Vatican II in this new papacy. And it's like most people, everyone's moved on. It was a long while ago, guys.
Yes.
It spoke very much to that particular time, didn't it? And whatever you want to argue about that, the Muller Bishop Barron conversation was a really good intellectual examination of some of those ideas that we really enjoyed. But at the end of the day, everyone agrees, even people like that. We've spoken extensively to Professor Larry Chapp, who agrees wholeheartedly that it failed. Whatever it was trying to do, it didn't work, did it? So whatever you see at the heart of it.
I was pleasantly surprised. Well, maybe I wasn't too surprised. Cardinal Müller has certainly become more and more traditional as the years go on. I think kind of like Ratzinger did. He sort of went from a young Turk at the Second Vatican Council to the one who was promoting the Latin Mass as Pope. But Cardinal Müller said recently, there's an article at LifeSite about this. Somebody asked him a question after a lecture about the cancellation of the Latin Mass in various places. And he said bishops who are doing this are deplorable. They're acting against the good of their flocks. But then he said, this was the thing that struck me. He said, the liturgical reform after the Second Vatican Council did not succeed. He said something pretty stark like that. And therefore, his conclusion was, if people find the old rite more nourishing, then they should have it by all means, right? Now, I think probably Cardinal Müller would say, I think if you sat him down, he would say, oh, we need to fix or repair the new rite. We need to reform the reform. I think he would kind of fall into that camp. But he's the first to admit that hasn't happened and maybe won't happen for a long time. And that therefore there's nothing wrong with having ritual diversity, right? I'm not a fan of ritual diversity in the sense that I think we should just have the traditional Roman rite of our ancestors. But I would take, as a compromise, I would take freedom, right? It's kind of like, like if you
let the Holy Spirit do its work.
Exactly. I'm not asking for more top-down impositions or prohibitions. I don't want a pope in the future to come along and suddenly prohibit the Novus Ordo. I just want a pope to say, let the Holy Spirit sort this out. And I said it to Matt Fradd, as you know, I said, if there was a true laissez-faire attitude and you could let priests and faithful choose what most nourishes their faith, what most inspires them to lead a Catholic life, I said in 20 years, the Novus Ordo would be almost gone. And I fully believe that. I do not think that that's unrealistic. And that's part of the reason why certain forces in the church want to shut down the Latin Mass, because they're deathly afraid that that's the outcome, right? And you could say, if you want to be charitable and not bring in modernism or homosexuality or whatever, you could just say some of these people have dedicated decades of their lives to this project, and they are not ready to admit that it was a mistake.
Yeah,
they're just not ready to do that, and that's understandable. It's understandable
in some respects. But you've got a situation in the Vatican where you've got like documents on Mariology that didn't consult any Mariologists, it is farcical in lots of different ways, isn't it? And the trouble is that they're just undermining their own credibility with this stuff, aren't they? Especially for those of us who know and love our faith.
Yeah, there's a kind of, you have to keep a sense of humor. I know it's difficult. It's like gallows humor, but you sort of have to keep a sense of humor at times, because if you just step back and think about it, what could be more... Sorry, that's another phone.
Is that your other phone?
Another phone.
Peter Kwasniewski.
But it's farcical that we have, as the head of the Holy Office, the former Holy Office, Tuco Fernandez.
He's investigated by the CDF
in this position. The things he's written are scandalous, and it's so, evil shoots itself in the foot over and over and over again. And that, this is what we're seeing. Now, I hope you'll give me a few minutes to get back to the College of St. Athanasius, just before we wrap up.
Yes, sorry to divert you.
Yeah, no, it's great. These are important topics. And I think I see the College of St. Athanasius, like all of the other Newman Guide schools I mentioned, as part of grassroots lay resistance to corruption, to progressivism, to liberalism, to all of these ideologies. These are grassroots movements. So what I wanted to mention is, people might be wondering, okay, so what is the practical plan for the College of St. Athanasius? It's expensive to open and to run a college. I know that because I've worked for startups, as I said before. It's a difficult, steep climb to open a school. So the College of St. Athanasius, it has a magnificent vision. It's a vision that deserves to become a reality. It has a wonderful group of scholars and academics who have contributed to writing the curriculum. So it's not just the brainchild of one person. It's a whole team of people that have been working on this. And as I said, I love what they've written in their informational bulletin. what they need to do is buy property and start and actually get a start date. And I can't predict right now, is that going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? It all depends on whether they can acquire the property they're looking at. They have found a perfect property in Illinois. It's in a little town called Hanover, a rural town. And it's a former commercial building, 4 stories. And what I love about it is it's perched on this little piece of land that has a river running around it like a horseshoe, and trees. It's a bucolic setting, a very, very beautiful setting. And from the top floors of the building, I would guess third and fourth floors at least, you can see panoramically over the whole rural landscape. So a really, really choice place for a college to be founded. It has tons of space. I don't even remember how many, 100,000 square feet, how much space it has, but it has enough for all the classrooms, for single-sex dormitories, for library, offices, work areas. I mean, it can comprise everything that the college wants to do. They actually have part of the property is the riverside, the literal, I guess is what you'd call it. All there's sort of riverfront property all the way along. So really nice areas to walk in, fields, to play in. It's really a magnificent piece of property. They've been accepted. The college has been accepted as a purchaser of this property if they can amass the needed funds. So, obviously this is mostly for Americans. I'm not necessarily expecting people from overseas to contribute to this unless they really feel called by the Holy Spirit to do so. But for Americans who are watching this, I really encourage you to check out the website, the vision, and then to get in touch with Tim Bratt. That's Bratt. You can find his email at the contact page of the website. I can also provide it for you so that you can put it there. I think this is actually a steal. They can buy this building, its outbuildings, the surrounding property, which is something like 30, 40 acres. I forget how much it is. And they can renovate the whole place, make it totally usable for all of these purposes. And they can do that for $10 million. That's a complete price. Purchase, renovation, and opening. I mean, that sounds like a lot of money, but actually, if you're experienced about schools, that's a really good price for that amount of stuff. Yeah. So again, this is a pitch I'm making to anybody out there who wants to help make the College of St. Athanasius a reality.
Brilliant. Let's get the word out. If anyone can help, then we'll put the links in the show notes and they can get in touch.
Yeah, they can get in touch with me also if they want to talk to me first. And then I can answer their questions.
Phone on him. Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, there are a couple of phones you can ring him on.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I'm always this popular, but for whatever reason, somebody's trying to get hold of me. So maybe it's a plumber. Who knows?
Yeah.
You say it's not for the UK, and you know that this will mostly be of interest, perhaps to our US audience, but just of the small group of homeschooling families I'm friends with, I can think of maybe 5 families where 2 or more of their eldest children have gone on to Christendom, PAC, and gone to the US. So it actually is a bit too.
Well, let me clarify what I meant. I only meant that the fundraising and the donations would be more naturally drawn from Americans. But obviously students, can come from anywhere. TAC has students from probably 10 different countries. WCC has students from multiple countries. One of my best friends from England, I won't embarrass him by mentioning his name here, but he sent his oldest son to Wyman Catholic College just this past year as a freshman. So yeah, absolutely. Students come on over. I was just thinking that, for donors, it makes more sense to donate.
No, I knew what you meant. I was just saying that it's actually, there are many people in the UK who may see that as worth investing in. They know that because they know that their young people may well go across the pond and study at those very good colleges.
Yes, and it's funny, isn't it, how history repeats itself, right? During the recusant period in England, all the hopeful clergy had to go across to Douai in France, or Douai, however they would say it at the time. I know they always mispronounce things, and so they had to go abroad to get educated, right? And to this day, I know so many people who, in order to get certain degrees, let's say in canon law, they end up going to Rome or they go to Toronto or whatever. So, traveling to be a student is as old as the Middle Ages.
Yeah, brilliant.
Wonderful. Well, please check out all those links below and contact Peter. There's information there also for you to get in touch with him. But thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure, and we hope to speak with you again very soon, Dr. Peter Kwasniewski.
Thank you so much, Catherine and Mark.
God bless.